All right, everybody, welcome back. Best of their day. Returning guest, Dr. Yuri Feito. If you have not listened to our last podcast, go back and listen to that one. I know you're busy, but we were just discussing you are now working from home like most other people. So,
Yes, I am. I'm glad about it too.
but I'm excited to talk because you and I actually started the conversation about the topic for today months ago, and I've been kind of just like waiting for this to get published so that we could discuss it. And what I want to dive into today is the recent study of yours that was published. And again, we're talking about injury rates. And so if anybody wants to search it, um, you could find it in BMJ Open Sport and Exercise Medicine, and the title is "Breaking the Myths of Competition: A Cross-Sectional Analysis of Injuries Amongst CrossFit Trained Participants." And because we all know this is a discussion, is just like CrossFit's dangerous, people get hurt doing CrossFit, and that is anecdotal. That statement at best, right? We all know that if we're inside an affiliate, like injury rates are incredibly low.
Mhm.
But it's cool to see a study done on this that we could reference. Like as a professional, as a gym owner, it's nice to have that in my back pocket. Be like, no, here you go. Like this is, you can read through this and it'll tell you what you want to know. So give us a little bit of background of the study so that people have context.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of our previous work, right? We talked a little bit about, I guess it was back in November last
Mm-hmm.
year. We talked about this 3,000 number. We surveyed about 3,000 people. We kind of had this survey going on for 4 different years. So I think we ended up sampling from 2013 to 2017. And the reason that we stopped in 17 is because the games, the CrossFit Open kind of changed a little bit, right? How people were sort of qualifying and that sort of thing. And that would make that comparison a little bit off. And we use the Open as our sort of, the survey would go out. We use social media and kind of just, anything that we could get our hands on, we kind of just share with the
Mm-hmm.
community. And we sort of use the starting of the Open as our sort of our end time or end date to look at the surveys. And again, this is a continuation of previous work. We really just surveyed everybody in the community who wanted to take the survey. We asked a bunch of questions about their participation, how often they train, who they were from a demographic standpoint, really just getting an idea of who the athletes were. And then we send out the survey every year for 4 consecutive years. And we build up a relatively large sample size. Like I said, overall, the total number of participants is over 3,000.
Yeah, I think 3,049 is the exact number, I believe. Yeah. Yep.
And till today, it's the largest cross-sectional study in the literature. So, we could talk about the limitations of a cross-sectional study in this type of design. And
Yeah, so I think that's a great place to start. So let's start first. What is for those that have no background in any of this, what is a cross-sectional analysis?
Yeah, so cross-sectional study, we're really just looking at one point in time, right? So we send out a questionnaire and we are asking you about one specific point in time, whether it's today, tomorrow, and it's a set of the population. Unlike a longitudinal type of study where I could follow you over a period of time. So if, which is typically the real answer, the real way to answer this question would be that, right? So I have you start a training program day 1 and I follow you for 365 days. That would be a longitudinal design. And at the end of the year, I measure the number of injuries you've had over that past year. That ultimately is, the most accurate way, if you will, to measure those injuries. But obviously you could imagine, it's hard to keep somebody for 365 days. Think about answering surveys almost every day to make sure that, we're keeping up with what you're doing, and then trying to keep people involved and engaged for 365 days or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years is it's almost impossible to do. So
that was the follow-on question is like, if that's the ideal, and you basically just answered the question, but the scope of a study of that magnitude, could it be done? Like,
it could be done. It would require a lot of affiliates that commit to the project.
Okay.
and it has to come from the affiliates, right? Because me as an outsider, as a researcher, yeah, I could get access to the populations, but having the affiliate buy-in and say, hey, we're going to do this as an affiliate, we're going to do this together. And if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 affiliates that each have 100 or 200 people, all of a sudden you got 2,000 people that you could follow over a period of time. That will be the best way to do it. But again, that requires time, not only from you as the affiliate owner or coach, but also from the participant to be able to do that every day or every week. And there's a loss to follow up where people just kind of fall off the bandwagon and
Yeah.
things. So it's just time consuming. It's hard to do. When you look at some of these epidemiological studies, and again, epidemiology being the science of populations, right? Just looking at population. Multiple, they have years of surveillance, years of data, and they have 2, 3, 4 million people that they've surveyed over time. But their attrition rate is 50%. So
Okay.
they start with 6 million and they finish with 2 million, or something to that effect. So again, it requires time. It requires time from the affiliate owner. It requires time from the participant. It requires time from the researcher. It requires money. So it's just time consuming and cumbersome. So the alternative, if you will, is to do this cross-sectional type of study where we just take a sort of a snapshot of what the population looks like. In this case, we have 3,000 people. Again, it's a very small percentage of the people around the world that are doing CrossFit, right? But it gives us something to start with and continue to look at.
Have you tried to figure out roughly what percentage of the overall CrossFit community this could potentially be?
I would say, honestly, and I'm going to do math real quick here. If we have, let's say that there's 15,000 affiliates, right, around the world, and every affiliate, let's just say that has 100 people, right, 100 members, and some may have more, some may have less.
Yeah.
Just throwing a number here. That's 1.5 million CrossFit participants, right? And I'm talking about people that go on a regular basis, not regular. You know what I mean? Like that's the general pop. And then if you have 3,000 out of that 1.5 mil, you're talking about 0.2%.
0.2%. Okay.
And again, this is rough calculation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody's going to hold us to that, but I was just genuinely curious, like roughly what that might look like. I don't think 1.5 million is off. That's probably a fair number if you think about just like, I mean, if you think about it, they had, what was it, 2 years ago, they had almost 500,000 people did the open, like over 400,000. So I don't think it's far fetched to say it's 3 times that many people are actually in affiliates doing it. It's actually probably higher, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, if I may, and, having this opportunity, if there are any affiliates out there who are listening, that really want to follow their athletes and do that and put it into practice. And, they're willing to really, help out with the data collection and really just nothing else, there's really nothing to do other than sharing this survey on a regular basis. I would love to be able to bring in, multiple affiliates and have, 3 or 4, 10, 15, 20 affiliates around the country or the world for that matter. And then follow 100 people in, even if we have, 3,000 more, there's 3,000 different than the sample that we have. So again, it's a call out to any affiliate owner out there who wants to do a little bit of research within their affiliate and really help us with the answering the question.
What would, for you, as far as conducting the study, what would be an adequate number of people that you would need to get? Like, what's the number? You're just like, hey, this makes the study worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question to answer because, we would have to look at what, from a statistical standpoint, we look at a power analysis, right? Depending on what are the variables that we're looking for, what are the changes. But if I could and really get a number, I would love to, one of the things that I've tried to do over time is try to survey everybody who joins the open, and have an opportunity to serve the person, because if you have 500,000 people and every single person answers the question of, have you been injured over the last year and to what degree? That's 500,000 people that we know that we could collect data on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the more is better, especially for the analysis piece. But again, it takes time, and it's, you know, it's limited, right? It's that cross-sectional
Yeah.
one-time shot of the data. If we could get to those numbers, it would be amazing, because I guess, again, the more people that we could incorporate into a study, the more understanding that we have about the real risk of injury. And again, obviously there's a caveat to that, right? It's a
Yeah.
survey data, and humans, we as humans sometimes don't really tell the truth when we
Yeah.
ask to answer a survey, right? So it's all self-recall, right?
Mm-hmm.
So self-report. So there's going to be some limitations there, but nonetheless, it's the best we got. So we try to minimize some of those biases and
Yeah.
limitations we can
Well,
with some of these.
I don't have his ear, but if I ever do get Eric's ear, the new boss, I'm
Man,
happy to pitch that idea. And so I don't actually think it would be that far fetched, because I mean he's a data and analytics guy. Like, I mean, there's got to be, I would imagine, based on limited conversations I've been involved with, like that they're going to have an app that's going to come out at some point. And I can't imagine that it would be hard to integrate something that would resemble a questionnaire into an app that I don't know, a couple million people are probably going to use. So, which again would make sense, because it would be beneficial because of what we already know, which is it's not dangerous, you know? So
and I think so we know that, right?
exactly.
But we're in a small, think about
Yeah.
if
It's in a
one,
silo.
yeah, exactly. There's 1.5 million people who do, who are CrossFitting, based on the example that we just talked about. Very small percentage of the population. Who else in the fitness industry needs to hear that stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the more studies, the more data that we collect in that regard, the better informed that we're going to be. And to be honest, let's just say that it was dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's find out why, if that's the case.
Yeah.
So the data is still, whether it's one or the other, is still
Still
valid.
useful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we know that back shoulders are the sites, the locations of most common injuries, then you as an affiliate owner need to think about, oh well, maybe I need to warm up that deadlift better, or I need
Mm-hmm.
to look at more. You know what I mean? So I don't see and of course maybe that's just my bias as a researcher, right? I don't see a drawback to not having that data, regardless whether it's beneficial or not.
No, I agree with you. As a trainer, as an affiliate owner, or just as anybody that would be looking to progress, whether it be in the business or as a professional, it would not look at that data and not be able to find something useful out of it, whether it was just like, and again, let's just use your example, which is it came back with data that we didn't expect, which is like, okay, 50% of the people get injured, right? Okay, well, shit, well, why? And like, oh, well, we look at our programming, and then we analyze that, and we're like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't program deadlifts as an example.
Right.
We know that's not happening, but again, it's just good information to have, so that that I think about it, like we're in a heavy military town, and then I would that would be useful to me, having conversations with certain commands, or like, hey, CrossFit's dangerous, and I'm like, no, it's not, based on this. Stop referencing the damn champ study and all these other nonsense stuff. So
Right.
I think that stuff is super useful. So just to be clear, so I want to talk a little bit about how the study is, how the data is collected, and what the limitations are of that, right? So it's a survey. Like, I just send this out and you answer and you send it back.
Yeah. We actually, we don't, we just put it out on social media, and we try to get as many hits as we possibly can
Mm-hmm.
through social media sharing mechanisms, whether
Yep.
it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And I really relied on other CrossFitters, affiliate owners, coaches, and, people that I knew in the industry, and as well as, within the community, and say, hey man, just share this as much as you can. And as just a single guy, well, just me, myself, and our team, a relatively small number of people, To get 3,000 people over 4 years, I was pretty happy with the numbers.
Okay.
But yes, you're right. It's a survey. We put it online. We have it open for, I think it ended up being open for about 12 weeks towards the end of the year. So like November, early December, it was kind of when it came out, and it was open all through the beginning of the year, right until the beginning of the open.
Okay.
The idea to shut down before the open, because people are competing in the open. I don't want to collect that data. If you got
Yeah.
last year in the open, that's cool. I want to know that, but I don't want to mix the data. So I needed to have a time period from that standpoint, and then from there, we basically just calculated everything in the standpoint of once we know how many people have answered the survey, then we can start looking at those numbers and calculations. The one thing that's important to keep in mind is, even though we have multiple people complete the survey multiple times,
Hmm.
we assume that every individual was one person in this survey. So if you answer the question 4 times, or if you
Hmm.
answer the survey 4 times, you were 4 different individuals, because
Got it.
it was anonymous. So I couldn't pinpoint which answer was yours.
Got it.
So we felt that just adding the numbers as an individual, so every single person was its own control, if you will.
Got it.
That's kind of how we calculated those numbers.
Okay. So what's the difference between this one and the previous study?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the previous study really looked at everybody who answered the question. And the idea there was, we just need to know what is the injury rate, and what does that look like in the population and that one point in time. This one, it really focuses on those individuals in the community who actually compete. So this is all about competitors. So every single individual who participated in the open, the regionals, as they were last year, or in the past.
Sectionals.
No, not, I'm sorry, not last year, but in the past, the
Okay. So got it.
regionals.
Got it.
So regionals, and then the games. So if
Okay.
you look at the data, how it's laid out, from the 3,000 participants that we had overall, about 50% of them, if you look at that figure one, 51%, so 1551, actually said that they competed in one of the three areas, right? So the
Okay.
open, regionals, or the games. So
Got
in
it.
this particular study, we're really just focusing on those athletes who are competing on a regular basis. And the one thing with the competition is we kept it to CrossFit sanctioned events. So,
Okay.
we look at your local competitions or your affiliate competitions, just because we don't really have access to that data, but I could
Yeah.
look what the open is. I could look at what regionals were, and I could look at what the games are, right? So we kept it at, and we asked the question, have you competed at a CrossFit sanctioned event,
Hmm.
such as the open, regionals, and the game? So very, very specific question.
Yeah. Now
And
there's an
then,
obvious delineation there, which I think anybody who's into CrossFit like gets it, right? So there's a significant difference between the mass group of people that compete and the open versus everybody that makes it to the next level. Um,
sure.
so I'm sure there's going to be some criticism about like, is that competing, or are they just doing a workout on a Friday? Which I don't know if that's relevant or not, but the the level of intensity goes up. So I don't know if that like, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud as we're kind of talking through it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really good point, right? So the for us, that was kind of the outcome variable, but one of the things that we looked at was, we really were interested in looking at the number of sessions per week that you participated in.
Yep.
So do less than three to five, more than 5 sessions per week, and that kind of helped balance a little bit of that, right? So
Got it.
going to be a discrepancy between me just participating in the open for the hell of it, because I'm, sort of doing it, with everybody else in my community. And then I'm going to do the cookout at the end.
Got it.
Versus, some elite level athlete who's really trying to get to the game. So, that separates people a little bit more. So
Yeah.
it's not just competition was the first level of of definition, if you will.
Yeah,
And
you have
then
to
we
have
were looking.
some sort of entry point to delineate, okay, this is the population that we're studying. Yeah.
Right. So we need to narrow it down, and so we went from 3,000 to 1,500, and then from those 1,500, we looked at injured, not injured in the open, injured, not injured, if you made it to regionals, and then injured, not injured if you made it to the games, and that's kind of what that figure one in the article. And I'll tell you this, I'll share this with you, with everybody later. But if anybody just wants to get a copy of it, they could email me, hit me up in social media. I'm happy to share it. So you don't have to go out search for it or anything like that. I'm happy to share with anybody. So
Okay.
yeah, if you look at table one, if just you and I having a discussion here, if you look at table one on that page 4, you can see how competition is one level of sort of description, and you can see how there's it's divided into age group, male, female,
Yep.
training experience based on years, participation, days per week, workouts per day, workouts per week. I'm sorry, and then do they work out at a training affiliate? So that's kind of the big, all the comparisons, but the starting point, the delineation, what we were looking at is the people that actually competed.
Got it. Is there something else of this nature out there, like um has anybody else done a similar study like this?
There are few studies that I have looked at stuff like this. They're much smaller sample size. I mean, you're talking about 100, 150 people.
Okay.
Whether it's one gym or something like that. There's a group out from Brazil that have something similar that looked at, I think they looked at 10 athletes and they follow them over a period of time. I think they're kind of a team,
Okay.
and they follow for like 6 months or something like that. So there are several other studies that have done, something like this. But again, this is, the one thing about this particular study that makes it different is, the sheer number of people that participated over a period of time, and the fact that we have consecutive data over 4 years.
Yeah.
So it gives us that sort of, overall picture.
Okay. And then I always think this one is worth just rehashing. So the difference between injury rate and injury incidence, because this is one that people get, like, even I do. I still always get confused by it. But
Yeah. So think of incidence is the number of new cases. So the incidence is really just a percentage, if you will. So it's percent of people that are injured, in the period of time. So how many new injuries do we have in the overall? So if you look at that injury incidence data right there on page 5, we say, 318 respondents, so people who answered the survey, reported a single injury, while 183 of 20% reported multiple injuries. So an injury incidence is a percentage of people from the total sample.
got it.
The injury rate, when we talk about rate, we talk about time, and then in this case, we talked about 1,000 training hours, and that's really the only way that we can compare the data with other studies when we put it in reference, and the reference being 1,000 training hours. So
Got it.
yeah, we could have 30% incidents, right, where 30% of the people who CrossFit get injured, but your injury rate is only, I don't know, in this case, about 1.5, 2 injuries per 1,000 hours. And the reason for that is, if you are an elite level athlete and you're doing 5 workouts a day, you have 5 different time periods in which you could potentially get injured, compared to me, that I only come for a 45-minute session one time. So, so that's some of the ways that we try to kind of quantify and compare and sort of put everybody into the same group so that we can make comparisons and make everybody, quote unquote, equal.
So that factors in training volume. Is that a safe way to say that? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Which ultimately,
go ahead.
Which ultimately we know that impacts the potential for injury, right?
Correct. Well, at least I think.
That's assumption, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so oh man, I just lost my page. So in this, so what, like, you don't have to go through the full questionnaire, but like typically what kind of questions are you asking in the questionnaire?
Yeah, so it was, basically we asked a series of basic demographic questions, right? So obviously who you are, age, sex, or we looked at binary variables. So we didn't really ask gender. We looked at male, female, um, and just for really for simplicity, not to be exclusive, just for
Yeah.
simplicity variable itself. Um, so we looked at just that. We looked at training intensity. So not intensity, but how often.
Hmm.
So duration of training, how long they've been doing CrossFit overall, and then we asked them, where, have they been injured? Yes or no. That have they had one injury, multiple injuries? Where have they experienced an injury? What kind of injury they experience? But we actually have a very specific definition of what an injury was. So it was
So that's
something
where
like
yeah, that was my next question actually. So what qualifies as an injury? Like if I tear my hands on doing pull-ups, is that an injury?
it was only an injury if it cost you to stop your training program,
For
and
any duration.
any duration, and it costs you to seek medical advice,
Got it.
healthcare professional, something like that. And we have to be very, very specific, right? People were like, oh well, that's not really an, what happened to somebody who, like, sprains an ankle, twisted ankle in the box, and they have to be out for a day or so, and but they come back the next day. Well, I mean, we could slice this however we want, right? But with something like this, we have to make sure that we have something very specific. And that's one of the issues when looking at injury studies, is that a lot of times you don't really have a definite response to what is an injury, you know?
Well, to be fair to you, I mean, I don't know that you could make it any, I mean, I'm sure you could, but like that's pretty broad, right? I'm trying to think of like, I mean, I've had to stop training because I had like a tweak in my neck or something like that, and then I go get it fixed, and it's not debilitating, it's not permanent, but it would fall in the category of injury because I was out for a day because like I can't turn my head or something like that. But um, so again, to be fair, that's a pretty broad definition for injury.
It is. It absolutely is. And, and we kind of try to make it narrow yet broad at the same time, because you can't put everybody into one single box, right?
Hmm.
So it was hard to really design the study with like, oh, this is the only strict definition that we want to use. So,
Yeah,
we took a chance. You could call that a limitation as well. But I think I think we did a good job with what it is, and how it how people answer and responded to the survey. So we looked at that. We also, we looked at, where have you been injured? Is it a shoulder? Was it the back? Is it the
hmm,
head, the ear? And basically it was a list of body parts. And then we asked people, what kind of injury was there? So not only did we want to know, the numbers and the quantitative piece, but we also wanted to know the qualitative piece, right? Like you said, oh well, I just tweaked my neck. Well, that doesn't mean that you broke your neck, right? You
hmm.
just kind of had a little bit of a pinch. So there were some. We actually had to go through some of the answers, because we weren't really sure what some of those. When people say yes, I got injured, we actually went to those blank boxes and said, okay, what kind of injuries did they have?
Yeah,
And if they didn't, whatever the description of an injury was, didn't really kind of fit what we were looking for, that data, the entire data set, that entire individual was removed from the survey, just to keep from any kind of ambiguity, right? We want to make
got
sure
it.
that everybody is answering the questions the same way to be
Yeah.
able to have an accurate response.
Okay. And then, so I think anybody's listening probably has a pretty good idea of the study, what it entails, and who we're looking for. So now, like, is there, before we kind of talk about the findings, is there anything else that's relevant as far as this study goes that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think the most important piece is we looked at people who were competing,
Got it.
trying to understand what is the likelihood of them, getting injured. over time.
So my assumption
Yeah.
would be that it would be higher. Having been an athlete myself, because Jay likes to make fun of me, but having played college basketball, uh, the it's 100%. Everybody gets injured.
Hmm.
Like at some point, I don't know anybody that plays at that level that has not missed practice game or whatever due to some sort of injury. I'm sure they're out there, but they're definitely very rare. So what were the findings when you guys started like sparsing this out?
Yeah. So we went to we went into this analysis in that same direction. Our hypothesis was that those people who had greater volume would be more likely to get injured, and we didn't find that at all. It was actually the opposite. What we found was that the people who trained the least and the least amount from a days standpoint, so less than 3 days in this example, in this particular sample, were more likely to be injured compared to those who train 3 to 5 days a week or more than 5 days a week. So it seems like the kind of sort of a occasional athlete that comes into the box or competes. Again, this is competitors.
Yeah.
So people who are competing that only train 3 days a week or less than 3 days a week are more likely to get injured compared to the people who have greater volume of training. And it kind of makes sense though too, because if you are competing, you have some level of expectation, right? For whether for yourself or your team or your box or whatever. And you're probably more likely to engage in greater volume. And you probably, I hate to say this, but you're a little bit, you're smarter with your training. And I'm doing air quotes here
Yeah.
because, you know what I
You're
mean?
probably talking about somebody who spends more time doing mobility, probably spends more time paying attention to their nutrition, who probably gets regular body work done, like all these things that are generally associated with somebody who's taking their training a little bit more seriously.
And that right there, that's the key right there. So you have those people who are spending a little bit more time doing the non-traditional strength, high power type of work. And in that regard, we see some of this stuff that it does help. It really is protective.
And
Now,
was there a pretty hard line at the 3 times? Like, is it pretty obvious if when you're looking at the data, you're like, damn, 3 times or less? Like, there's a significant difference here.
yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at the article, look at figure number 2. I think that gives you a pretty good look at what that looks like, right? So you see that both male and it was irrespective. I
This is
mean,
like 4. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So if you look at one, right? So one, if you look, anybody looking at this figure or later on, kind of just understanding that figure 2 a little bit. One is injury,
Hmm.
right? So anything that falls below that one line will be considered quote unquote protective. So
Okay.
everybody who is less than one, and these are ratios, right? So these are just ratios, incident ratios. So anything less than one is indicative of being protective.
Hmm.
Everything above one is indicative of being higher risk. So
Okay.
you could see there that for the either whether that you're competing or non-competing, right?
Hmm.
So remember, we have this binary variable
Yep.
versus non-competitors. You could see that whether you're competing or not competing, less than 3 days of training seems to be much more conducive to injury compared to 3 to 5 or more than 5 days.
Yeah. So for anybody who's not going to look this up, so there it's basically imagine looking at the power graph from the level 1, right? So this is not a power graph, right? But imagine that graph. So we got an X and Y axis, and then on the Y axis you have this is incident rate. And then
That's
on the x-axis, you have male, female, and then you have male, female, and then it's broken down into basically two pieces: non-competitor and then competitor. And then with each one of those groups, it's got less than 3, 3 to 5, and then greater than 5. And it's pretty obvious when you look at less than 3, the incidence rate is very obviously higher in all 4 categories that you're looking at.
maybe what I'll do is I'll post some of these figures on my Instagram, and
Okay.
could, I'll link it up to your account, and maybe we could do something
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be good.
if you want to do that as well, we could do that too. So
Yeah, but it's pretty obvious just looking at it. I mean, it's when you're first looking, if you don't look at a lot of graphs, you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But like once you kind of understand it, it's very, very obvious that less than 3 times a week, there's significantly higher incidence
and
rate of injury.
and people were looking like, oh well, what does that even matter? But for me, as a researcher trying to impact the community, I could go back and you made a point about this before. I could go back to an affiliate owner and say, hey, when you look at your membership and you look at those people who are coming in, maybe these are the people that you might want to pay a little bit more attention to, or try to encourage them to come more often for this one particular reason.
Yeah. Or I mean, I think of it almost a little bit more binary, which is if I'm offering an option of lower attendance that would lead to a higher rate of injury, maybe I just stop doing that at all. Like we just did that. I have no memberships other than unlimited anymore. I thought about
Really?
it, I thought about it a couple different ways. One of which was why, if I truly believe in what it is that we're doing, why would I limit somebody's attendance? Right? That's just stupid. And, some people are like, well, it's money. And I'm like, okay, are we really going to split hairs about $30? Maybe we are, maybe we're not. But that's my decision to make as a business. And no, I'm not. I want people to be in here 5 days a week, and we can scale appropriately. But now that I'm looking at this, it does beg the question, why would you even tee up that scenario?
Right. I didn't want to say it that way because I'm not a business owner, right? I'm not an
I'll say it.
I'm a researcher, and I can't tell how to run your box, but 100%. That was exactly my thought process here is like, if you are a business owner, you shouldn't have less a 3-day a week memberships, or less than 3 days. You shouldn't have that kind of the fraction of memberships. You should have memberships that are at least 4 days a week, because that at least 3 to 5 seems to be the magic number. And again, even if you just look at the non-competitors,
it's this. I mean, it's virtually the same.
Virtually the same. The only thing difference is, and the competitors, if you look at the competitors more than 5, those rates are way lower.
Which is crazy if you think about it.
Yeah. But those guys and girls are doing the extra mobility work. They're taking care of their bodies. They're taking care of their nutrition. They're taking care of every single weight that they're lifting. They know exactly what's happening. And
I mean, there is something to be said for, like, they're just tougher. Like the body starts to adapt, and it becomes, I think it was Ripeto's thing. He's just like, strong people are harder to kill, and it's like, well, they're probably harder to injure as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it is worth a discussion because, and I know people want to cast as broad as net as possible, and this is a business discussion, but like knowing this and looking at this, and again, we know that it has limitations, but it's still valid to prompt a conversation. And that conversation is, maybe you shouldn't do that anymore. Maybe, and I think about this from a practical standpoint, like having owned an affiliate for 10 years, the people that are not on unlimited, that fall in these really limited memberships, because we used to have 2 times. We used to have 8 member, like years ago. They're a nightmare.
Right.
They are a nightmare customer, and you like just, hey, it's a tough pill to swallow, particularly depending on where your business is at. You say, oh, well, I just need all these people, and it's like, or you could just put all of your focus on the people that are great to you and good for your business and all of those things, and you're going to deal with less injuries. Just statistically speaking, you're going to deal with less injuries.
Yeah. So, and again, I mean, I think, and not because of what the study is, and it's our study or whatever, but I think the data is worth looking at as an affiliate owner. Just at it, and it's like, oh wow, maybe I should change my membership model, or sort of my plan, or whatever pricing plan, whatever. Again, I don't want to get into anybody's business model,
Well,
but
but I mean, they can price it whatever they want, right? So, like, absent the discussion about like what is the dollar figure, the discussion is valid because what we should be talking about is value, right? If I'm going to be offering the best value, then that should entail the least possibility for somebody to get injured, which is like, I'm not going to limit your attendance because the likelihood of you getting injured in some of these instances is almost double.
yeah. And even and it's, you bring up a good point, depending on where you are. If I can take you to figure
Okay.
three, it's going to blow your mind. And I think this is where
So
affiliate,
we're looking at A, B here.
you're looking at A
Okay.
being non-competitors. So the difference with this graph is it's exactly the same. Y-axis is incidence rate per 1,000 hours of training. The x-axis will be non-competitors versus competitors. A is non-competitors, B is competitors. But within that x-axis, you have
Age. So that is.
yeah. So it's
Okay.
age less than 25, 25 to 29, and then subdivided into less than 3 days per week, 3 to 5, more than 5 days a week. And just look at that 30 to 34 and 35 to 39 age group and the non-competitor category. Look at those injury rates.
Well, it's very similar if you go to, well, the competitor actually goes up in the older age, but yeah, this one is really high. So, if you had a pretty good picture in your mind of the previous graph, imagine that graph just basically taking them and now you split them up, and now I have them on two separate graphs, but now I've delineated for age. And it's the same thing. It's still the less than 3 is significantly in virtual. The only one that's different is the only one that's not is that 25 to 29, where it's like not really any statistically different.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you could say that those are younger
yeah.
participants, and
Well,
they're
it's not different in the non-competitor. Let me be more specific. In the non-competitor, which is every affiliate, right?
yep,
In the non-competitor graph, ages 25 to 29, there's virtually no change in
yep.
injury and incidence rate. But all the other ones, I mean, it's glaringly obvious, specifically in that age, which is quite frankly like the bulk of your demographic, 30 to 34.
Yeah. So again, I'm a researcher. I'm
Yeah.
not in the business, right? But I think it's definitely, maybe, you guys want to have a discussion about this in the future. Is, what does this mean for an affiliate owner? How do you price out those membership options, or what kind of membership options do you provide in order to limit some of this stuff?
Well, it's a different lens to have that conversation through, which is, so we talking about dollars and cents, or are we talking about what's in the best interest of the client? Which is, if we're going to have about best interest of the client, well, then we shouldn't offer anything that's less than 3 times a week, which is basically unlimited. I don't know anybody that offers anything between the 3 and unlimited. I don't know anybody that does 4. Like, if at that point, it's just like, just come every day.
Yeah.
Um, but that, I mean, what is that? Almost 3 times higher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
300% increase in injury.
You know what I mean? And again, there's, we could talk about the limitations of the study, and what, we could really slice it, and it's not a perfect study by any means. But it's the data that we have, so
Well, I mean, I would agree, but I would also say, again, anecdotally, my experience would match that, and I would probably only become more and more accurate the deeper we dive into that. Well,
yeah. And
because
I think,
if you just think practically, who are these people? They're the people that are quasi interested, that show up sporadically, that are not there on a regular basis, getting all of the work in. And they're the people, again, that are for lack of better terms, they're your problem children in class. Like, they don't know what's going on. They don't listen. Um, you know,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
super
absolutely.
interesting.
So, I mean, I think, from a standpoint of, for you guys as affiliate owners, I think it's important. I think it's good. I think it's good data, and it could be useful, which is ultimately what we as researchers really want, right? We could
Mhm.
do all this stuff all day, but if nobody reads it, nobody looks at it, nobody applies it, then
Yeah.
point.
I mean, these are they for every single one of these in both I mean, the only one that's not that way, and again, it's probably just because they're young, is 25
Yeah.
to 29. You know, you're basically invincible in that that age.
And I think there must have been, and I actually, if you go back, I have to go back to the numbers, but there may be some number issues that where there was just a smaller percentage or of the general population. But again, um, like
No,
if you
that
look at, I'll take that back. They were actually pretty, yeah, it's about 500. Yeah, I'll take that back. No, yeah, I mean, they're just,
it's
they're
about the same.
about the same. Yeah, resilient. They're more resilient in the, from an injury standpoint. Again, it's not a perfect study, but
Mhm.
it gives us some data to look at and have this type of conversations, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just interesting, right? It's just something to consider, and I think it's as an affiliate owner, it's worth looking at. Like I said, we just changed ours, and I don't offer anything other than unlimited. For now, that was twofold. A, you and I had this conversation already. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But B, I just thought about it from a service provider standpoint. Like, why would I limit the access to this thing that I think is so valuable to people? I'm like, just give them one membership, and we've changed it, right? So you can still have a different. If somebody's like, well, you can't just have one membership, you can, and you can still have tiered pricing, but it can be based on length of agreement, where a year or 6 months or something like that, and you can still have a sliding scale for people who don't necessarily want to spend as much, but if you do it that way, you're actually pushing people towards lower injury rates because they're going to show up more frequently for longer durations. And again, this is in their best interest if we're talking about my ability to train them and keep them healthy. So it makes sense, not just from a standpoint of psychologically, but statistically speaking, from a standpoint of reducing the likelihood of them being injured.
Injured, yeah, for sure. And if you if you go back, if you go down to table two,
Hmm.
and that table two, we try to do is sort of what we call regression models, right? We sort of put in a bunch of variables into the model and try to identify which variable was the most significant in regards to predicting injury.
Okay.
So model one is just kind of the regular model. Don't look at that. Look at model number two. Model number two includes age, sex, again, this is a binary, male, female, BMI, training at an affiliate, yes or no, and then competition. And you can see the 95% confidence intervals there. And we
Hmm.
use the 95% confidence intervals sort of as a marker of what significance would be. And all of those numbers, every single one, age, male, BMI, training at an affiliate, and the competitors, you see the numbers. The OR is the odds ratio. It's how
Okay.
likely are you to be injured. If the odds ratio falls within that 95% confidence interval, so
Hmm.
for example, age, that odds ratio is 0.9,
Okay.
that falls within that 95% confidence interval, right? So 0.98 to 1. It's a very small
Yeah.
confidence interval, but at point 0.9, it's right in the middle. So that tells us that it's not statistically significant.
Okay.
So that kind of gives you sort of an idea of what that looked like. So if you have the odds ratio number
Hmm.
and the 95% confidence interval sort of splits one or includes one. Remember, we talked one as the sort of the marker, right?
Yep.
That we're looking for. So that tells you the level of significance. So model two gives you age, female, male, female, BMI, training at an affiliate and competition. None of those are significant.
Hmm.
If you look at model three, in model three, we added the length of participation.
Okay.
And we further divided that length of participation on purpose. So we looked at 6 months, 12 months, 1 to 3 years, and 3 to 5 years. So looking at how how often, not only how often do you train, but how long have you been training.
Hmm.
And it seems like, look at that 6 months, less than 6 months number, the odds ratio is above 1, right? Remember in those graphs, we talked about being above 1,
Yep.
having risk. And the 95% confidence interval is all above 1. So it does not include that 1 number.
Got it.
So it seems like less than 6 months of experience is the most significant factor for an individual to get injured.
Which again prompts another discussion about, hey, what should be the protocol with which we bring people in and, bring them into the fold? Like, what is your on-ramp or foundations or whatever is it PT first model or all these things? That would be a totally separate, interesting conversation if you could somehow collect data versus pick 3 different intake processes. Is it PT first? Is it a 12 session foundation, or is it directly to class? I mean, I would imagine we could probably make a guess, but it'd be worth looking at just to, again, as far as determining best practices so that people could maximize their time with clients. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and again, it's available data, right? So I'm a researcher. I don't have an affiliate, so I'm not an affiliate owner. But this data really, my goal is to be able to, inform the affiliate owners what this data looks like. What 3,000 people answered. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
if we take this survey and take another 3,000, it may very well be different.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure how different it's going to be. I think length of participation, or how long you come into, you're doing CrossFit before you jump into competition.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to be said there. And I'm not sure that that's going to change regardless of the population.
And again, I don't even know that that's even, I mean, it's relevant, but I don't know how relevant because of how, I don't want to say loose the definition of competition is, but we've classified competition as you participated in the open, which most of us could agree that is not what we would consider a competitive CrossFitter. Like, and
True.
again, now again, like we know we have to have that. You have to have some line in the sand there, but if we apply context to it, then
right.
that's a different conversation.
Right. In a silo, right? If you just look at what it is, then it's who cares, right?
Yeah.
But it does have some level of implication when you have the context of, hey, what are you going to do with this brand new person that walks through your door and they're only going to come work out twice a week?
Mm-hmm.
And then they want to do your local competition which is in 2 months.
Yeah.
You
I think this stuff is super interesting because typically these conversations about how you bring athletes into the gym or what your membership structure looks like are not had with this information in mind. They're had solely from the standpoint of what is the business portion of this. But the big takeaways that I see from this is, if you have people coming less than 3 times a week, they're more likely to get injured. So it's worth discussing, should I even offer that anymore? And for most people, I would take a look. If you just look at all the people on your roster of active athletes, it's not a huge chunk of people that are on those memberships. It's like, what would be the financial loss of doing that versus the reward of just trying to get more of the other people? And then looking at it potentially just saying, should I revamp how I bring people in, because the statistical significance of people getting injured happens in that first 6 months? And can I do something to hedge that in order to make sure that number stays down as low as possible? That's the 2 big takeaways that I see here. Is there anything else that I missed on that?
No, I think that's where, and again, we came into this study with the same thought process that
Mm-hmm.
we originally discussed, right? The people who have the greatest amount of volume will be more likely to get injured, and it turned out to be completely the opposite. Which again, if we can inform affiliate owners as to what that means, and then we could have the same conversation within the context of the data,
Mm-hmm.
what that looks like from a business standpoint. I think that's the practicality that we as researchers really want our studies to impact the
Mm-hmm.
community. Again, if we had more people, we have 500,000 people that participate in the open, then we could do exactly the same thing. But instead of having 1,500 in one group, now we have 150,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's much more involved.
And the other thing that's in here that we didn't really discuss, because we kind of always leave these people out, but the statistics are still the same. They're still relatively similar, is the older population. So you're talking about 50 to 55 or 55 and older. these are the people that typically don't come in that frequently, and the injury rate there is higher like that. So I'm looking at that now, and like, if you have some people that are older, they definitely need to be in there more frequently.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe they come in and their programming is significantly different, but maybe not, right? It depends on who they are, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Scaling or whatever, that's totally different. But
Well, what is funny is that the competitors
uh,
of 55 plus who come in less than 3 times a week, injury rates are really high.
yeah, but I mean, it makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, I'm just like, but we all know that one guy, right?
There's always that one guy that's 60 years old that wants to be, athlete and just comes twice a week.
Yeah.
I've been an athlete all my life. I don't need to.
Slow down, Bob. This has been great, man. This is really, really good stuff. Anything else in here worth? I mean, I feel like we touched most of it.
I think we could dive in and dissect every little ounce of it. But I think those are the main points that I think the affiliate owners and the listeners should really take away from this.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have discussions with anybody and anyone who, any comments, any feedback.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. And again, what I'll do is I'll sort of pull these figures and
Okay.
share them on Instagram, people to take a look at with a link to the study, or if you guys want to do that on your end.
Yeah, because what we can do is we can share them, and I can even put together a summary of just like the why this stuff would be relevant and what questions you should be asking. But I think this is super, super relevant. And again, just, there's nothing wrong with a good thought experiment.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, and to be clear, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not the last study that we have to do. It's not perfect. It's got limitations, just like every other study. But again, informs in some way, answers a question that has been limitedly studied in the literature. So
Yeah.
And if you get this data and you apply it to your affiliate, that right there is it's what we want as researchers. That's kind of what we seek.
Yeah.
From a standpoint of the application of our data and our studies.
Well, listen, everybody, if you guys have questions about this one or the previous study, or you're interested in being involved in data collection with Yuri, I don't think he's going to tell you no. So you can either reach out to us and we'll do the handoff. Just hit us up on Instagram, best hour of their day, and we're happy to do that handoff. Thanks, brother. This was awesome. I don't know how many other people want to nerd out on this stuff, but I think once you get past all the graphs and stuff, there's some really relevant information here for the affiliates.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the time. I hope that it's helpful for the affiliate owners and athletes out there, and coaches. I think most importantly, the coaches that are the first line of any affiliate. So again, if I can help in any way, any affiliate out there that wants to track their injuries or want to do something like this and nerd out and some of this stuff, hit me up. I love to talk.
Yeah, we'll do it. Well, listen, brother, I appreciate it, and I think this is good. And we'll just continue this conversation.
Cool, awesome. Stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right, on Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. best hour of their day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.